Please don't hurt me. He kidnapped me and forced you to come here. Please let me go. I promise I'll never cross paths with you again. You don't get to make the decision. You belong to me now. He whispered dangerously, sending chills down her spine. With that, he untied her from the chair. Follow me, he ordered. Vine's heart pounded with fear as she hesitantly obeyed, her every step filled with dread. She did not want to go with him, but the thought of disobeying him filled her with even more terror. With each step towards his car, her fear intensified. Jungook's voice was cold and commanding as he ordered Vine to get into the car. Get in. She hesitated, fear coursing through her veins, but she obeyed him, slowly making her way towards the car. As she met his intense gaze, she felt a chill run down her spine, his eyes piercing into hers like a knife. Trembling, she finally mustered the courage to speak. Shall I go home? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, stuttering with fear. His tone remained menacing as he responded to Vine's plea. You think you have a choice in this. You belong to me now, and you will go where I say. Don't even think about trying to escape. With that, he gestured for her to enter the car. His words sent a shiver down her spine, her heart racing with fear as she realized the depth of the danger she was in. As she walked with Jungook towards his big mansion, she felt really scared. There were so many bodyguards around, making her heart beat fast with fear. Jungook's demeanor was as cold as ice, his gaze piercing and intimidating. Follow me, he commanded, his voice sending shivers down her spine. Inside the mansion, things were even scarier. It was fancy, but the feeling of danger was everywhere. This way, he said firmly. Vine followed him hesitantly, her mind racing with fear. What is this place? She managed to stammer, her voice trembling with anxiety. This is where I live, Jungook answered, his voice making Vine feel even more scared. As they walked through the mansion, Vine couldn't shake the feeling of being watched by the bodyguards. She stuck close to Jungook, feeling like she couldn't be safe anywhere else, but also wondered what if he was the biggest danger. Vine's feeling towards Jungook had completely changed. She used to admire him, but after witnessing him summoned so easily, she was now terrified of him. Her old affection for him was gone, replaced by a deep fear. As she walked through his mansion, she couldn't shake off the memory of what she had seen, making her heart beat fast with fear. She desperately wanted to get away from him, but fear held her back, leaving her feeling helpless and trapped. Finally, they reached a big room in the middle of the mansion. You'll stay here, he stated sharply. Vine's heart pounded furiously in her chest. Trapped in the presence of someone as cold and dangerous as Jungook, she felt a wave of fear wash over her, chilling her to her bone. She knew she couldn't escape. All she could do was pray for his mercy. There are some rules in this house. Break them and you will wish you were never born. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she listened to his menacing words. In a voice that sounded like a thunderstorm, Jungook said the rules with a chilling seriousness. Rule number 1. Don't even think about running away. Any attempt to escape will be met with severe consequences. Rule number 2. Never cross the red line in the corridor. It marks the boundary between safety and danger. Her pulse quickened at the dangerous warning. And finally, rule number 3. Never enter the basement under any circumstances. To do so is to invite your own demise. Her blood ran cold at the mention of the basement. She nodded obediently. She knew disobeying him would be a grave mistake. It's been 2 days since Vine last saw Jungook. He warned her that day and then disappeared. Feeling a bit braver, Vine decided to escape tonight. She planned to wait until all the maids were asleep, then sneak out through the back door of the mansion. There would be fewer bodyguards there compared to the front door, and she had some ideas to distract them. Silently, Vine peeked out of the room, carefully checking for any maids or bodyguards, but she found no one. Slowly, she crept out of her room and quietly locked it behind. With cautious steps, she made her way towards the back door. Finally reaching it, she peeked out and saw more bodyguards than she expected. Her heart raced and she started sweating. Looking around frantically, she spotted another path that seemed like a secret route. It was narrow, but it appeared to lead outside. Carefully, she ran out towards the path, hoping it would lead her to safety. Unaware of the danger lurking ahead, she hurried along the narrow path, hoping it would lead her to safety. Meanwhile, Jungook was on his way back from the cave, but Vian had no idea about it. As she walked further, fear gripped her heart, intensified by the eerie silence of the night. Little did she know she was walking straight into danger. Jungook sensed someone approaching, causing him to abruptly halt in his tracks. When he laid eyes on the figure, shock swept through him. She definitely needs to learn her lesson today, he muttered under his breath, his jaw clenched tight. With deliberate steps, he continued forward, his gaze fixed on the ground as if he did not see her at all. But Vine spotted him from afar and fear gripped her. Her heart pounded with fear as she turned to run. With unsteady steps, she hurried down the hallway, her breath uneven and her legs trembling. In her panic, she accidentally knocked over a flower vase, sending it crashing to the ground with a loud shattering noise. Though terror surged through her, she dared not glance back. With trembling legs, she rushed into the kitchen, her mind consumed with terror. Vine's hands trembled as she reached for a glass of water, her heart racing from her harrowing escape. She took a sip, but before she could swallow, Jungook's voice. She froze, the glass slipping from her grasp as she choked on her water. She did not expect him to know the truth. Swallowing hard, she slowly turned to face him as Jungook took predatory step towards her. Fear gripped her heart. She scanned the room for possible escape, but before she could make a move, he pinned her against the counter with his arms on either side. Thought you could outsmart me, did you? Her breath hissed as she struggled to find her voice. She shook her head, her body trembling from fear. I was thirsty. She managed to stammer out, her voice barely audible. Hearing that, he drew his face closer to her, his presence suffocating her. She could feel his breath on her skin. Oh, I see. Then have it. He grabbed a glass of water and handed it to her, his movements swift and deliberate. Vine took the water from his hands with trembling fingers, her gaze flickering nervously to his. What are you waiting for? Drink. Aren't you thirsty? She nodded quickly. So, you broke my rule number 1. You attempted to escape, his voice dripping with danger. And rule number 2, you crossed the red line that I warned you were prohibited to cross. She choked on her water, startled by his words. She knew she was in deep trouble. Each word carried a weight of warning, a reminder of the consequences of disobedience. Please, why are you doing this to me? Let me go. I just want to go home. Her voice trembled with fear as she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. His lips twisted into an evil grin. Oh, suddenly you started hating me, he taunted. You were so brave before, he continued, his hand reaching out to caress her cheek. You used to follow me every day and you even pretended to be blind just to get my attention, didn't you? His touch sent a chill down her spine. She remained silent, her eyes glued to the ground. His eyes bored into hers with chilling intensity. Remember this. You chose this path, and now you must walk it to the end. There is no turning back now. If I ever catch you breaking my rules again, his voice was low and chilling, his eyes glinting with a dangerous intensity. I'll make sure you regret it in ways you can't even imagine. You don't want to see the dark side of me, trust me. The intensity in his eyes made it clear that he meant every word. With a final menacing gaze, he turned and walked away, leaving Vine shaken to her core. Caught in the grip of fear and regret, her mind raced with thoughts of escape. She knew she brought this on herself by not listening to her friend's warning. If only she had listened to her friend, she wouldn't be in this mess. But now she was paying the price of her own actions. Vine sat in her room, her mind consumed with thoughts of escape. Despite the care provided by the maids, The mansion still felt like a prison, suffocating her with its oppressive atmosphere. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, a knock echoed through the room. Assuming it was one of the maids bringing her food, Vine got up from her bed and made her way towards the door. She turned the knob and pulled the door open, expecting to see a familiar face on the other side. However, her blood ran cold when she saw Jungook standing there instead. Jungook, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mind raced with questions, wondering why he was here. Vine stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide with shock as Jungook entered her room without a word. Her heart hammered against her chest, the air thick with tension as she watched him lock the door behind him. Every instinct screamed her to run, to escape his looming presence, but fear rooted her to the spot. Jungook turned to face her, his gaze piercing and intense. The weight of his stare sent shiver down her spine, and she couldn't help but to take a step back, her mind racing with 1,000 questions. "Why are you here?" Vine finally managed to ask, her voice barely audible. Jungook's gaze bore into hers, his voice held a grave seriousness as he spoke. "I'm here to discuss something important. I'll be going on a mission that will last about 2 weeks, but I need to make something very clear to you. Do not even think about attempting to escape from here." His words carried a weight of warning that sent a chill down her spine. She listened to him carefully as he continued. "If you try to outsmart me and escape, you will be the one to suffer. I have many enemies and they won't hesitate to use you against me. Last time, I saved you because I couldn't stand someone attacking me indirectly. Mark kidnapped you to get back at me, and I despise that indirect approach. That's why I confronted him head on. You're staying here for your own safety. If you leave, my enemies will see you as someone special to me, and then they will try to use you against me. That's why I'm keeping you here, to protect you." With that warning, he left the room, leaving Vine to think about what he said. 2 days had passed since Jungook left on his mission, but his warning still echoed in Vine's mind. She found herself torn between conflicting thoughts. Part of her wanted to listen to his words and stay there, while another part urged her to seize the opportunity to escape while he was away. After battling with her thoughts, she made a decision. Staying in this mansion felt like a torture to her. How long would she have to endure this? A lifetime? Vine had been planning to escape for days. When the chance came, she tricked Jungook's guards and left the mansion. 2 guards followed her, but she sneaked to the back gate without them noticing. With careful step, she slipped through the gate and vanished into the night. Her heart pounded with excitement as she left the mansion behind, feeling free once again. Despite their efforts, 2 hours passed with no sign of her. Terrified of Jungook's anger, the guards finally gathered the courage to call him. "What is it?" he demanded. With shaking voice, the guards informed about Vine's escape. Jungook's silence was scarier than any words could be. When he finally spoke, his voice laced with fury. "You let her escape," he growled, his rage palpable even through the phone. The guards trembled as Jungook unleashed his wrath upon them. "We are sorry, boss. You will pay the price. When I arrive, I will show you the true meaning of fear. You will wish you were never born as I unleash." With that, he abruptly ended the call. Each word from his lips echoed in their mind, filling them with dread and regret. They knew their punishment will be. Vine ran as fast as she could, her heart pounded with fear. She did not stop, not even for a moment. She had no destination in her mind, just desperate to escape. But no matter how hard she tried, her legs refused to obey her commands. As she lay there, trying to gather her strength, the sound of an approaching car sent a wave of panic through her. She scrambled to her feet, but her tired legs couldn't support her weight. Fear clenched her heart as she braced for the worst. The car stopped just inches away from her, and Vine's heart hammered in her chest as she stared at the 7 masked men who came out from the car, dressed in black from head to toe. They looked like something out of a nightmare. Terror gripped her heart. Desperately, she tried to crawl away, her voice hoarse from screaming for help. But there was no one around to hear her cries. The men surrounded around her, their menacing presence sending a chill down her spine. Trapped and alone, Pine could only pray for a miracle as the shadows swallowed her whole. "Who are you? Don't touch me," she crawled backwards. But the masked men ignored her desperate struggles as they forcefully dragged her towards their car. She screamed and thrashed, but their grip remained firm, unaffected by her feeble attempt to break free. As the car started moving, Pine felt deep regret. She wished she had listened to Jungook's warnings. His words kept replaying in her mind. Now she felt utterly helpless, knowing that Jungook wouldn't come to save her this time. Tears filled her eyes as fear gripped her. The car drove down the darkened road. The sound of the engine was the only noise in the silent night. Pine sat tensely in the passenger seat. Suddenly, the screech of brakes filled the air as a car sped into view, blocking their path with a loud crash. Pine gasped in shock as the driver slammed on the brakes, bringing their car to a sudden halt. As the dust settled, Pine's eyes widened in disbelief when she saw Jungook stepping out of the car. Her breath caught in her throat. With each strike, he fought, sending shockwaves through the air. Bones shattered and bodies crumbled under the force of his blows. Vine's heart pounded in her chest as she watched in horror, her breath caught in her throat. As the fight raged on, Jungook's eyes locked onto hers amidst the chaos. His gaze was cold and unforgiving, sending shivers down her spine. With each devastating blow he delivered, Pine's panic intensified, her mind reeling with the realization of how dangerous. But amidst the chaos and terror, there was also a comforting feeling knowing that Jungook was fighting to protect her. With each man he defeated, she felt a flicker of hope. As the last man crumbled to the ground, Jungook's gaze locked onto hers with a chilly intensity. His deathly stare pierced through her, causing her to gulp hard, but at the same time, she couldn't shake the image of Jungook fighting to save her from her mind. Tears welled up in her eyes as she rushed towards him, eager to express her thanks for saving her life. But as she approached closer, instead of embracing her, he seized her throat, lifting her effortlessly off the ground. "You thought you could escape." Jungook's voice was cold and menacing, his grip tightening around her throat. Panic surged through her as she struggled to breathe, her tiny fist pounding against his shoulders in a desperate attempt to free herself. "You will pay dearly for your actions," he growled, his voice sending shivers down her spine. With a final glare, Jungook released her, leaving her trembling and gasping for air. "I will show you the real meaning of fear. Get ready to face your..." As Jungook dragged Pine towards his car, her cries grew louder, tears streaming down her face as she begged for her life. "Are you going to..." she sobbed, her voice trembling with fear. Her words stopped Jungook in his tracks, and he turned to look at her, his heart momentarily softening at the sight of her terror, and he felt a pang of regret for his harsh actions. Had he scared her so much that she thought he would hurt her? "Please don't," she pleaded. "I promise I'll never disobey you. I'll never run away." Her words echoed in his mind, stirring a mix of emotions within him, and despite his anger and frustration, he couldn't hear. He had tried so hard not to develop any emotions, but despite his efforts, he found himself caring for Vian even without realizing it. He hated himself for allowing these feelings to grow, for letting someone else in. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't bring himself. His grip on her wrist loosened as he met her eyes, his expression softening. "I'm not going to. I would never hurt you," he said gently. "I know you were scared, but running away wasn't the solution. Didn't I tell you that you were staying in my mansion for your own safety? Then why did you not trust me?" He spoke gently, making sure not to frighten her further with his questions. Her voice quivered as she finally managed to speak. I was scared. Her voice barely audible. Your place, everything there, it was so scary to me. Tears welled up in her eyes as she spoke. She looked up at Jungook, her gaze pleading for understanding and forgiveness. He realized that Vine feared him deeply, and he understood why. Thinking back on his actions from the moment he first encountered her to the time he brought her to his mansion, he had only threatened her. If only he had shown her kindness and gentleness, she might have trusted him. He regretted his behavior, wishing he had approached the Vian's eyes, once filled with curiosity, were now replaced with fear. He realized he had instilled that fear in her all on his own. Does my place frighten you? His voice, though gentle, it carried a firmness that demanded an answer. Am I intimidating? Do you fear me? Vian hesitated before shaking her head in response to his questions, but it only seemed to fuel his frustration. This is who I am. My world is dark and dangerous, and you walked right into it. I warned you to stay away, but you did not listen. Her heart pounded with fear as his words echoed in her ears. Jungook gently lifted her chin as he observed her fear, his touch both tender and commanding. I have always told you to stay away, to keep you safe. But there was something about you that I couldn't ignore from the moment I first saw you. His eyes held her captive as he continued. Every time you followed me, it stirred up conflicting emotions in me. Anger, yes, but also a strange kind of attachment. His thumb tracing patterns on her cheek. I wanted to shield you from the darkness that consumes my world. That is why I always threatened you, behaved rudely, hoping to scare you and keep you away. As Jungook poured out his feelings, Vine was so shocked as she listened to his words. She couldn't believe her ears. This was the man whose mere presence had instilled fear in her, yet here he was, speaking with such tenderness. She had never imagined that Jungook could sound so soft and gentle. It felt surreal, as if she had stepped into a different reality altogether. Mixed emotions swirled within her, confusion, disbelief, but also a flicker of hope. Could it be true? When I know my words and actions may have seemed harsh, but it was all to protect you. I care about you deeply, and I promise to always keep you safe. You can trust me. I will never let anything happen to you. Jungook approached closer to her, his gaze gentle yet determined, as he reached out his hand towards her. Do you still fear me? If you don't fear me, then trust me and come with me. Vine met his gaze. After a moment of contemplation, she took a deep breath and reached out, placing her hand in his. 2 months have passed since the incident that had changed everything. Vine no longer felt the same fear that had once gripped her at the near sight of Jungook. Despite his intimidating personality, he always made sure she felt safe and cherished. With each passing day, Vine felt more and more at ease around his presence. She no longer flinched at his or avoided his gaze. In his arms, she felt safe and loved, and she knew that she had nothing to fear as long as he was by her side.